Okay, so you've probably got a mix of ideas floating around, maybe some spiritual beliefs. Perhaps you're coming at this from a purely scientific angle. Today, we are diving deep, really deep, into the science. Well, the science of the soul.
It's definitely a big topic.
It is. We'll be looking at, the scientific angles on the soul, pulling from discussions about things like out-of-body experiences, those strange memories that seem like past lives, and just the power of consciousness itself. We'll see it from both scientific and, let's say, philosophical view.
A blend, really.
Exactly. Our mission today is to pull out the most convincing scientific arguments, the evidence presented, for a soul or maybe consciousness existing beyond just the body. We want this to be thought-provoking, but grounded in what the sources actually say. And guiding us through this, we have BK, Dr. Mohit Gupta. Your background is fascinating, an ideologist connected with the Brahma Kumaris. It's this blend of science and spirituality. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here to explore this.
It's always interesting to hear about the soul from a medical professional, right? Because medicine usually focuses so much on the physical.
That's true.
You were connected with the Brahma Kumaris even before medicine, since childhood. Was it those early teachings or something else that really sparked your interest in consciousness?
Well, the teachings definitely planted a seed, yes.
Yeah.
But the real sort of intellectual digging started back in medical school.
Yeah.
University College of Medical Sciences. During anatomy dissections, I just kept wondering, what's the actual difference between a living body and one that, well, just died?
Right.
We'd have the autopsy reports, cause of death, often listed as natural causes, no single disease pinpointed. But this body, physically intact, it couldn't see, move, speak, hear anymore. None of the life functions. I remember asking my professor, Dr. Sengupta, sir, what's missing? What makes this living thing not living anymore?
He said the prana is gone.
Not a life force. Exactly. That idea, prana, this vital energy leaving, that really stuck with me. It was the starting point for my own scientific look into it. I wasn't necessarily using the word soul right then, but I felt intuitively that some energy, some essence had departed. That's what caused the change. And that basic question just pushed me to look into the research, try to bring together different views on consciousness, on life itself.
That dissection hall experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really crystallizes the question, doesn't it? It challenges that purely physical view. So, building on that, what logical evidence did you find, maybe even just looking at anatomy itself?
Okay, let's break that down a bit. Even how we talk, our everyday language, it kind of hints at an inner I separate from the body.
How so?
Think about it. We say, I saw with my eyes, right? Not my eyes saw.
No.
Or I touched with my hands, not my hands touched. Same for hearing, walking. I heard with my ears. I walked with my legs. We automatically use I as the one doing the action, the one experiencing through the body parts. It implies there's something inside directing things.
Like a controller.
Exactly. And there's a great analogy in the Upanishads, the chariot. The senses are the horses, but the reins are held by an inner charioteer. And think about how we talk about the divine. It's Paramatma, the supreme soul, supreme consciousness.
Right.
You never hear anyone talk about a supreme body, do you? The focus is always on consciousness, pure consciousness. And maybe the most striking thing, logically, going back to those early medical days, was just how fast the change happens. From living to dead.
Instantaneous.
Yes. One moment, all systems go. The next, completely stopped. What leaves so suddenly, all the physical bits are still there. That suddenness strongly points to something essential, departing, call it consciousness, life force, whatever term you prefer.
That instantaneous shift. Yeah, it's hard to square with just a slow physical breakdown. Okay, you also mentioned near-death and end-of-life experiences. What's compelling there? Especially about memories from before this life.
Right, this is where it gets really fascinating. Let's talk about these reported past life experiences. Have you heard of Dr. Jim Tucker's work?
I'm not sure I have, no.
Okay, well, he documented a really compelling case. Sam Taylor, later known as Sam Wormold, a young kid in the US. Around 3 years old, his mom's changing his diaper. And he just says out of the blue, when I was your age, I used to change your diapers.
Wow. A 3-year-old saying that to his mother.
Exactly. And what's more, this kid could consistently pick out his grandfather from photos, even in big groups, like over 100 people. He knew him. He'd talk about details of his grandfather's life, habits, personal stuff, even knew things like bank account numbers.
That's specific.
Very specific. And here's the kicker. Sam was born about 18 months after his grandfather died.
Okay, wait. Born after he died.
18 months after. So from a standard science view, how could a 3-year-old possibly know all that? about someone who died before he was born.
You can't explain that conventionally.
It strongly suggests, doesn't it, that maybe consciousness or some kind of energetic imprint carries over experiences. From what we might call past lives, it seemed like this child brought Sanskaras, those imprints, with him.
Sanskaras?
Yeah.
Like recordings?
Kind of like recordings, yes, impressions. And this isn't just one story. Dr. Tucker and Dr. Ian Stevenson before him, they documented loads of cases. Children reporting past life memories. It's in books like Life Before Life. These repeated accounts, they form another line of evidence suggesting something about us goes beyond the physical body, lasts longer than one life, maybe carries experiences forward. And think about child prodigies too, you know.
Yeah.
Kids who are amazing musicians or mathematicians with zero training. Where did that come from?
Right. Innate talent that seems to come from nowhere.
Could they be tapping into something? Abilities, recordings from somewhere else beyond this life?
The Sam Taylor case is really something. It definitely challenges the standard explanations. And yeah, innate talents, very thought-provoking. Now, I bet some listeners are thinking, genetics.dna. Could these memories somehow be passed down genetically? What's your take on that?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Comes up a lot. And biologically, yeah, DNA is in every cell, right? We can extract it from a dead body even.
Yeah.
It holds the blueprint for physical traits, predispositions, but while DNA passes from parent to child, a dead person can't pass on new DNA. And more importantly, DNA as we understand it now, it doesn't code for specific personal memories, like detailed stories of someone else's life.
Okay.
But here's where it gets interesting. There's this newer field, epigenetics.
Right, I've heard of that. It's about how genes get switched on or off.
Exactly. How things like environment, maybe even our thoughts and intentions, can change how genes express themselves without changing the actual DNA code. Now, the research here is still evolving, it's complex, but some studies are starting to suggest a link between mental states and these epigenetic changes.
Really?
We're looking into this actively, and some early findings hint that focused mental practices might influence gene expression. But even if these changes could be inherited somehow, it's still a massive leap to say they could explain those detailed, verifiable stories in past life memory cases.
So it's not a simple DNA explanation.
It doesn't seem to be. The fact that consciousness might even influence gene expression, that points to something more dynamic going on than just physical inheritance.
Okay, so genetics doesn't quite cover it, but epigenetics, that's an area to watch. You also brought up past life regression. How does that fit in?
Regression offers another, well, intriguing angle on consciousness and memory. Take Dr. Brian Weiss. He's a psychiatrist, trained, and initially pretty skeptical about all this. He had this famous patient, Catherine. During therapy, using hypnotic regression, she started recalling incredibly detailed stuff from what seemed like past lives. Not just feelings, but names, dates, places, events. Things Dr. Weiss actually went and researched later and often found were historically accurate.
He could verify them.
Often, yes. And this led him, a trained medical professional, remember, to think these weren't just fantasies, there was something more to it. He wrote about it in Many Lives, Many Masters. His idea is that the soul goes through many lifetimes, learning, evolving.
So the therapy angle, using regression for healing.
Right. The logic there for things like phobias or deep emotional pain that doesn't make sense in this life is that maybe they come from these soul-level recordings, unresolved stuff from past experiences.
Like reprogramming the soul's hard drive.
Kind of, yes. By accessing and processing these potential past events in regression, people sometimes get insights, find healing for issues in their current life. It's like addressing an imprint on consciousness itself, one that lasts longer than just this body.
That's fascinating. Using potential past lives as a therapeutic tool, it really pushes against how we usually think about psychological issues. Okay, let's shift to near-death experiences again, but specifically out-of-body experiences during surgery. What's the science saying there?
This area gives us some of the most, well, persuasive evidence for consciousness working separately from the body. Look at Dr. Michael Sabom's research. He carefully studied people who had near-death episodes, some during brain surgery, who reported being out of their bodies.
And what did they report?
Amazingly, some of them, while their brains were medically considered inactive, flat EEG readings,
Brain dead, essentially.
Right. They could accurately describe the surgery being done on them. They could recount conversations happening in the operating room while they were completely
While they were unconscious and had no measurable brain activity.
Correct. Dr. Sabom did specific studies too, like with patients having surgery for basilar artery aneurysms. That surgery stops blood flow to the brain temporarily.
So consciousness should stop.
Under our current understanding, absolutely. Yet some patients gave detailed accounts afterward of the surgery, things happening around them. Details they couldn't possibly have gotten through their senses, given the anesthesia and lack of brain activity.
Wow.
It strongly suggests a form of awareness that can, well, detach from the body, perceive things outside it, maybe even travel a bit.
Those accounts are incredible. Recalling surgical details with no brain activity, that really pushes the limits of our current models of consciousness and the brain. You mentioned you had your own experience related to brain surgery. Are you comfortable sharing a bit about that?
Yes, it's a very significant part of my own journey, and it definitely shaped my understanding. Back in 2003, I had a severe brain infection, the big infective mass actually from tuberculosis. I developed resistance to most drugs, and the one I was on caused terrible seizures, just immense pain. So in 2005, I had major brain surgery. They removed a large part of my right temporal lobe.
That's significant surgery.
It was. And during the anesthesia, I had this experience, very vivid, a bright white light, a feeling of being separate from my body, and watching the surgery happen. I could see the surgeons working on my brain.
You observed it.
A clear visual perception, yes. But the journey wasn't over. 6 months later, January 2006, scans showed another lesion, inoperable. At the base of my brain, a critical spot.
Oh no.
The surgeon said they couldn't operate there. So at that point, drawing on my connection with Brahma Kumaris, Raj Yoga meditation, a senior teacher guided me to use yoga, focused intention, spiritual energy as a complementary approach.
Alongside medical treatment.
Absolutely. For the next year, alongside my medical care, I did intensive yoga meditation, consciously directing energy, intending to heal, visualizing the lesion shrinking.
And what happened?
In April 2007, follow-up scans. The lesion was gone, completely disappeared, no further surgery.
It vanished.
It was no longer detectable. That experience personally, combined with my medical background, it just solidified my belief in this incredibly powerful link between consciousness and physical healing.
That is an extraordinary story, truly.
Yeah.
It highlights that mind-body potential in a way that's, well, hard to fit into standard medical models alone, these out-of-body experiences, especially during brain surgery. It makes you wonder, where is consciousness? Or how can it work apart from the brain like that? Any scientific ideas about specific brain areas involved?
That's the big question, isn't it? There's an old idea, goes back to Descartes, the philosopher, suggesting the pineal gland.
The third eye.
Sort of. The pineal gland and the area right next to it, the hypophyseal fossa.
Yeah.
He thought maybe that's the seat of the soul, where the physical and non-physical connect. And interestingly, modern neuroimaging, like studies by Mary Beauregard on Carmelite nuns meditating deeply, showed increased activity, like hyperillumination, right in that brain area.
By meditation.
Yes. And anatomically, the pineal gland is unique. It's the only unpaired organ right in the middle of the brain.
Yeah.
Think about cultural practices too, like putting a tilak on the forehead right over that area.
Yeah.
A symbol of inner awareness. Many people report feeling a kind of energy or awareness right there during meditation or deep thought.
So it's a point of focus.
It seems to be. Now, science hasn't pinpointed one single spot as the location of consciousness. It's still evolving. But you've got philosophy, anatomy, neuroimaging, all sort of pointing to the pineal area as potentially significant, maybe a bridge between the brain and something more.
That connection, pineal gland, meditation, the historical seat of the soul idea, it's fascinating how it links old philosophy and new neuroscience. You also mentioned Dr. Eben Alexander's NDE. What was his story?
Dr. Alexander's case is powerful because of who he was before. A respected Harvard neurosurgeon, an atheist. He got severe bacterial meningitis. His brain was incredibly compromised, basically shut down. He was in a coma for 14 days.
Yeah. Medically, very little brain function.
Exactly. But during that time, he reports these incredibly vivid, detailed experiences of his consciousness completely outside his body. He described realms based on telepathic communication, overwhelming love, a reality beyond our senses.
While his brain was offline.
Right. And what's crucial is he recalled details of his medical treatment during the coma, things he couldn't have known through normal means, given his state.
That's hard to explain away.
It led to a total shift for him. From atheist neurosurgeon to someone convinced consciousness is primary, that there's a reality beyond the physical. He talks about it widely now, pushing for a change in scientific understanding.
That transformation, based on his own direct experience despite his scientific background, that's a significant challenge to the status quo. What about Anita Moorjani? How does her story fit?
Anita Moorjani's story is another really powerful example of consciousness potentially influencing physical reality.
Yeah.
She had terminal cancer, riddled with tumors. Doctors gave her just hours to live.
At the very end stage.
Yes. And she describes having a near-death experience where she had this profound shift in understanding herself, her illness, everything, a sense of clarity, connection. And when she came back to her body, she had a spontaneous, complete remission of the cancer.
Complete remission from being hours from death.
Yes. Her recovery is documented. She wrote a book about it. It's inspired many people to reconsider, the limits of medicine and the power of inner healing. And it's interesting, too. Even people blind from birth report visual elements in NDEs.
Yeah.
Which suggests it's not just about physical senses.
These are all incredibly compelling stories and research avenues. It really feels like we're uncovering an anatomy beyond just the physical body.
That's a great way to put it, an anatomy of consciousness or anatomy of soul. It includes the physical, yes, but also this realm of experience, memory, potential that seems to go beyond those physical limits.
Right.
We're really human beings, psyche and soul integrated, not just humans, defined only by the physical.
Okay, so that leads to a big question many people probably have. If consciousness continues, if we carry things over, why is there so much suffering? What's the role of these past imprints in our current actions?
Suffering.
Yeah.
It's complex, definitely has multiple sources. One potential source, as we've discussed, could be those Sanskaras, the imprints from past experiences. They might show up as tendencies towards certain fears, illnesses, maybe negative patterns.
Things we bring with us.
Potentially. And of course, our actions and choices now in this life are huge. They create joy and suffering. Environment, society, they play a role too. But crucially, we also have agency, the ability to change, to transform ourselves through spiritual practice, conscious effort. There's even some, preliminary research looking at correlations between birthmarks or defects and reported past life traumas or illnesses. It's early days for that kind of research, needs much more study, but it's suggestive.
Interesting.
And the power of Sankalp-focused thought, intention, is really key here. It can influence our mind, our actions, and maybe even, as we touched on with epigenetics, our biology.
So intention and belief seem really powerful, which brings up a practical point. If intention is that strong, can it heal major illnesses on its own? Should people rely only on spiritual practice, or where does medicine fit in?
That's vital to clarify, absolutely vital. Spiritual practice, intention. They should complement medical science, not replace it.
Okay.
Think of a plant needing both sun and water. It's similar. A holistic approach uses the best of both. Ignoring medical advancements would be, unwise.
Yeah.
In my own healing, remember, the spiritual work was alongside the medical treatment.
Right, you emphasize that.
The synergy, the combination, can be incredibly powerful for healing. Science addresses the physical. Intention and inner work can boost the body's own healing power, resilience. We also have to be realistic. Not everything, especially things with strong genetic roots or severe physical damage, might be fully curable by intention alone. But the evidence we've looked at epigenetics, the placebo effect, clearly shows intention plays a major role, improving quality of life, easing suffering, maybe even changing the course of illness, even if a full cure isn't possible by any means.
That makes sense. An integrated approach is key. You've shared some amazing experiments already. Are there others that really show this mind-body power?
Oh yes, several really striking studies. Dr. Ellen Langer's counterclockwise aging study, for instance.
Counterclockwise aging.
Yeah. She took elderly men and put them in an environment meticulously recreated from decades earlier. They lived as if they were back in that time. Talked about current events from then, acted younger.
Just by changing the environment and mindset.
Exactly. And after just a few weeks, they showed significant physical improvements. Better blood pressure, more flexible joints, even better cognitive function. Just from that shift in mindset and experience.
That's incredible.
Another one is Dr. J.B. Mosley's knee surgery study. Published in a top journal, New England Journal of Medicine, he took patients with knee pain, randomly put them in 3 groups. One got real knee surgery, one got sham surgery. They made incisions, acted like they did surgery, but didn't actually do the procedure inside. And one group just got physical therapy.
Okay, so real versus fake surgery versus no surgery.
Right. And the shocking finding. The patients who got the sham surgery reported just as much pain relief and improved function as the ones who got the real surgery.
Wow. So the belief, the placebo effect, was as powerful as the actual operation.
It strongly suggests the power of belief, the mind-body connection in how we perceive and even overcome physical symptoms.
Those experiments really drive it home. The mind has a huge impact. Okay, let's shift slightly. Sometimes you hear talk of soul possession, dark souls, positive souls. What's the perspective on that?
Let's think about it in terms of those recordings, or Sanskaras again. When people say dark soul or positive soul, it's probably not about the soul's basic nature. It's more about the quality of the stuff it's accumulated, the impressions, and the energy that results.
So the baggage it carries?
Kind of. Think about a person's energy field, their aura. Some instruments can even measure aspects of it. Basically, thoughts and intentions create energy. Negative thoughts, negative actions, they tend to generate negative energy. You could call that a darker state. Positive thoughts, positive actions create positive, vibrant energy.
So it's not an outside entity taking over.
It's more likely about the person's internal state, the energy they radiate based on their own accumulated thoughts, feelings, actions.
Yeah.
And the good news is it's changeable. It's dynamic. Through conscious effort, self-awareness, choosing positive thoughts and actions, you can shift that inner state, change your energy field. Things like anger, jealousy, constant complaining, criticism, expectations, comparing yourself, those drain positive energy, create that darker state. Whereas you feel good, peaceful, uplifted around people who embody positive qualities, right? They radiate positive energy.
Yeah, you can definitely feel the difference.
So it's less about external possession, more about the soul's internal landscape and the energy it gives off based on its patterns.
That's a much more empowering way to look at it. Focus on the internal state.
Okay, as we bring this fascinating discussion towards a close, what are the key practical things listeners can take away? Actionable insights from this whole exploration?
I think the most fundamental thing is try to cultivate a deeper awareness of your true self as a soul. An eternal point of consciousness. Remember those inherent qualities. Knowledge, power, love, happiness, peace, bliss, purity. They are your original nature.
They're already there.
Exactly. Realizing that, connecting with that identity, it helps align your thoughts, words, actions. That naturally reduces stress, creates inner harmony. And practices like Raj Yoga meditation, they are about connecting with the supreme source of those qualities, tapping into that inherent strength. It improves your inner state, your quality of life, and everything you do.
And this isn't about running away from the world, renouncing things. It's about bringing this awareness into your daily life, consciously choosing positive thoughts, positive feelings, acting with integrity.
That's a really beautiful and, empowering perspective. Connect with those inherent soul qualities to navigate life better. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your insights. It's been a truly profound discussion on a complex topic.
Thank you for the conversation.
And thank you, our listeners, for coming along on this deep dive into the science of the soul. So here's a final thought. If consciousness really does persist beyond the physical, and if our thoughts can actually influence our biology, what other potential is just sitting there inside you, waiting to be explored, waiting to be unlocked, something to ponder? We encourage you to think about how these ideas might resonate in your own life, your own experiences with consciousness. Join us next time for another deep dive.